in conclusion, and again, this is quite provisional and quite preliminary, leakage is a threat, but doesn't look to be particularly overwhelming. And a lot of these steady state results appear to be in line with what people predict will occur, somewhere between 30 and 50%. The transition path gives us cause for optimism and gives us reason to believe that we can actually mitigate a lot of the leakage. We can just afford to relax about it at the moment, but we also have to be cautious about what we say is going on right now, because it could lead us down a false path. The final point is that deforestation flow restrictions influence the steady state stock. So these changes in deforestation, these changes in land allocation are actually permanent, and we will end up with greater amounts of forest in the long run. And finally, future work is just to solve this more generally. This was a very specific case, and introduce exogenous population growth, so it has a bit more complexity and a bit more of correlation with actually what's going on in the real world. And finally, to calibrate the model using actual data. Thank you.
Have you said that the leakage is slow or very minimal in the first few years. Have you got any idea why? What is actually stopping people from doing it?
The specific assumption I made, this might get a bit technical and I'll try to keep it as general as possible. A lot of this rate of leakage early is to do with the functional form that I've chosen. I've had to make an assumption just to get the result out in a simple way, that the consumers really wanted to have a big incentive to smooth consumption. So what's happening is something like this, right? Ignore what it says here. It looks close enough to what happens with consumption, and they really want to smooth it out. So if I relax that assumption and allow a more realistic elasticity chroma to be modelled, it'll actually it'll allow more jerky a change in consumption, a discrete change in consumption at the point of the policy, which will actually ramp up leakage a lot more quickly. So it's to do with the way consumers are willing to respond over time to what we're actually deforesting for. Do we want it now, or are we willing to wait a few years for it? And that's what's driving it.
You've conducted this analysis for a closed economy, if I understand.
Yeah.
Have you thought about how this would differ for a small open economy, as many of the economies we're talking about at Aares, Indonesia, and Brazil, somewhat larger, but still open? How would that change your results? It seems to me the fixed prices, or the really fixed prices, might change the way this is transmitted. Here, if you restrict agricultural production, price goes through the roof.
Yes. I was looking at this the other day. The price of the consumption good actually hasn't changed over time in this model. I just had a quick look. I haven't really dug it out, but it was just constant over time under both scenarios. And it was the real wage, it was the factor markets, as you can see actually on this chart, which is the change in real wage under both circumstances. And that's what's driving it. It's because all of consumption is consumed every period by the household, I think. So any change in the price of the good is just transmitted throughout the whole economy, I think.
But it must matter whether this is a small country where you're doing this or you're doing it worldwide.
Yeah, possibly. I haven't really thought about it too much.
So in this period that you've got where you're saying leakage is not particularly happening, can you look at ways in which you can employ that excess sort of? You said when you do the national park, there's freed up labour. If you look at ways over that 5-year period to actually soak that up, either giving people jobs in the national park or other things, could you look at a scenario where that occurred and what the impact would be on leakage down the track? Yeah, you can add in, it would greatly complicate things. You just add in another sector and see how they absorb the different sectors. I don't know about just point blank
including another sector into the model at T equals 20. I'm not sure about that. But that's actually what happens on a lot of these projects anyway. A lot of these projects, particularly for avoided deforestation, the term is livelihood benefits. And so what you want to do is, a lot of times, there's a great proportion of tropical forests are being saved by beekeeping, for example. They just give them something else to do. Yeah. And that's the way that people go about mitigating leakage at the moment.
Coming back to that global point, it would be interesting to look at the global CGE studies of the effect of biofuels policy on deforestation, because you could think of biofuel policy as essentially like protecting an area, stopping food provision from a particular area, and they've got estimates of the impacts on deforestation that are quite large.
Okay.
So that might just be a sort of an empirical example to motivate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
One more quick.
Actually, linking to global, again, look at the funding for this RED and all these other initiatives are coming from another climate change policy in the more intensive economies. Their actually objective is to make a behavioral change in those economies. And therefore, and then therefore the net effect on the carbon policy is actually changing in low carbon intensive economies and not really the itself. And the other, therefore, with the really this small calibration issues are really going to be important in the end. And the fact, other reason is that, like China, India, Indonesia, all these countries, the error in the estimate of economic activity will be far, far greater than any error in these estimates, which we compare as an externality of the economic activity. Therefore, while the objective of this analysis in the way therefore should be to sort of see the net effect in the entire policy in the global context.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, actually. Well, there's been a lot of work on internationally with forestry and the forestry sector and biofuel sector. A lot of that, again, was focused looking at the role of just actually what would happen. Much the same as what I'm doing. And the reason why this is a small closed economy, at least at this stage, is because I really wanted to tease out and dig out the role of factor markets and to see if they could mitigate or moderate or extend leakage relative to current estimates, which are all based on partial equilibrium analysis. That's sort of where I'm going with that. And then, yeah, so there are estimates out there that do this, but my focus was a little bit different.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Patrick, and join with me in thanking for a rather provocative